Voria screver historia com vido mais profundidade, paiseo e detalhes em cada capítulo. Acquiesca. They say love chooses the most unexpected moments to reveal itself. But no one could have imagined that a spilled cup of coffee would become the beginning of a love story that would challenge everything society believed to be right. Meet Alexander Blackwood, 32 years old, with piercing blue eyes that seem to see through people's souls. As CEO of Blackwood Industries, he carried the weight of $1 billion empire on his shoulders. His chiseled jaw and perfectly tailored suits made him the most desired bachelor in New York, yet his heart remained untouched by the parade of socialites his mother constantly introduced him to. Every woman he met saw dollar signs where they should have seen his soul. On the other side of the city, in a small apartment above a flower shop, lived Minji Park. 28 years old, with delicate features that radiated warmth despite the hardships she'd faced. Her long black hair was always tied in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes sparkled with a kindness that years of struggle hadn't dimmed. She worked double shifts at Rosie's Diner, sending every spare dollar back to her sick mother and soul. Her hands, though tired from carrying endless plates, still managed to fold paper cranes during her breaks. 1,000 of them lined her windowsill, each one carrying a wish for her family's health. The story unfolds in the heart of Manhattan, where glass towers pierce the clouds and homeless veterans sleep in their shadows. Rosie's Diner stood like a time capsule on 42nd Street, its red vinyl booths and checkered floors a stark contrast to the modern world rushing by outside. The neon sign flickered like a heartbeat, welcoming the lonely, the hungry, and the forgotten. It was here, in this humble sanctuary of comfort food and honest conversations, that two worlds would collide. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. Alexander had just walked out of the St. Regis Hotel, where his mother had ambushed him with yet another surprise dinner with Victoria Ashford, heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune. Victoria had spent 2 hours discussing her horse breeding business and dropping hints about summer homes in the Hamptons. His Armani suit felt like a straitjacket, his smile a mask that was cracking at the edges. He needed to escape, to breathe, to remember why he'd worked so hard to build his empire in the first place. The rain came suddenly, violently, as if the sky understood his frustration. Without his driver, without his umbrella, Alexander ran. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles as he searched for shelter. That's when he saw it. Rosie's Diner, glowing like a lighthouse in the storm. He pushed through the door, water dripping from his usually perfect hair, and for the first time in years, he looked human. Minji was having her own terrible day. A customer had mocked her accent for 5 excruciating minutes, imitating her pronunciation of cheeseburger, while his friends laughed. Her manager had docked her pay for a plate she'd dropped yesterday. Her feet ached in shoes held together with superglue, and she'd just received a text that her mother's medication costs had increased. She was carrying 3 plates of the dinner special, blinking back tears, when fate intervened. The collision was spectacular. Alexander had chosen the exact moment to step backward from the "please wait to be seated" sign. Minji's tired feet tangled, the plates flew, and hot coffee created an abstract painting across his $10,000 suit. Time stopped. The entire diner held its breath. Minji's face drained of color as she realized what she'd done. This man's suit probably cost more than her yearly salary. I'm so sorry," she whispered, dropping to her knees, frantically trying to clean the mess with her apron. Her hands shook as she anticipated the anger, the demands to see her manager, the inevitable firing. She couldn't lose this job. Her mother needed surgery. Her brother needed school supplies. She needed this job like she needed air. But Alexander knelt beside her. Their eyes met, his blue like winter sky, hers brown like autumn earth. "Hey," he said softly, "it's just coffee. And honestly, this suit needed some character." He helped her gather the broken dishes, his manicured hands working alongside her chapped ones. When she tried to apologize again, he stopped her. "We all have bad days. Looks like we're having ours together." Something shifted in that moment. The billionaire CEO who just rejected another perfect match found himself genuinely smiling at a Korean waitress with coffee-stained shoes. And Minji, who'd learned to be invisible in a world that often looked past her, felt truly seen for the first time. If you believe that love can bloom where no one expects, maybe it's time to join us on this journey. Alexander insisted on staying to help clean up, much to everyone's amazement. He ordered pie, whatever you recommend, and tipped $200 on a $6 slice. But more than money, he gave her dignity. When her manager rushed over, ready to fire her, Alexander smoothly intervened. Actually, I'm thinking of having my company events here. This kind of authentic service is exactly what we've been looking for. Minji served him apple pie with hands that still trembled, but now for different reasons. As he ate, they talked. He learned she worked 16-hour days. She discovered he'd built his first company in a garage. He found out she sang Korean lullabies to calm herself. She realized he quoted Marcus Aurelius when he was nervous. By the time the pie was finished, something had begun that neither could name. Alexander returned the next night. He sat in the same booth, ordered the same pie, but this time he brought a book, The Art of War in Korean. Thought you might get homesick sometimes, he said, sliding it across the table. Minji's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever noticed that beneath her perfect English lay a heart that dreamed in Korean. Night after night, he came back. Always a corner booth, always apple pie, always conversations that went deeper than anything he'd experienced in boardrooms or ballrooms. Minji told him about her grandmother who'd sold rice cakes from a cart to put her father through school. Alexander confessed that his father had hugged him exactly twice in his life. Once when he graduated Harvard, once when Blackwood Industries went public. She taught him Korean words between refills. He helped her with her online business courses during slow periods. She showed him pictures of Seoul's cherry blossoms. He described sunsets from his penthouse that he'd never had anyone to share with. Neither acknowledged what was building between them, a bridge made of borrowed sugar packets and shared dreams. We have more stories like this coming. So don't forget to hit the like button and turn on notifications. The diner regulars began to notice. Rosie herself, 70 years old with eyes that had seen everything, watched them with knowing smiles. Marcus, Alexander's driver, reported to a worried Margaret Blackwood that her son was spending every evening at a diner on the wrong side of town. The other waitresses whispered and wondered, but Minji kept her feelings locked away. She knew what she was, a temporary comfort in a rich man's life. Soon he'd tire of slumming it. They always did. But Alexander didn't tire. Instead, he began to see his life through her eyes, and he didn't like the view. His penthouse felt like a museum. His mother's charity galas seemed like theater. The women she paraded before him looked like mannequins compared to Minji's genuine smile. He was falling, and for the first time in his life, he didn't want to stop the descent. The moment everything changed came 3 weeks after the coffee incident. Minji was working a double shift, running on 3 hours of sleep and pure determination. Her vision blurred as she reached for the coffee pot. The room spun. Alexander watched in horror as she swayed, dropped the pot, and crumpled to the floor. He was beside her before anyone else could move, cradling her head, checking her pulse. "Call 911, he barked, his CEO voice emerging. He rode in the ambulance, held her hand while doctors ran tests, and stood guard outside her room like a sentinel. When she woke, confused and embarrassed, he was there with answers she didn't want to hear. Exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration, he listed, his voice tight with controlled anger, not at her, but at a world that pushed her to this point. When's the last time you ate a full meal? When's the last time you slept 8 hours? Her silence was answer enough. Before she could protest, he was on the phone, arranging everything, medical bills and nutritionist, paid leave from work. "I can't accept this," Minji said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not your charity case. I'm not some project for you to fix." The word stung because they voiced his own fears. Was he just another rich man playing savior? Or was this feeling consuming him something real? "You're right," Alexander said finally. "You're not my charity case. You're..." He stopped, searched for words that wouldn't scare her away. "You're the only real thing in my life. Everyone else wants something from me. You just give, your smile, your stories, your time. Let someone give back to you. Please, would you have risked your heart for someone from a completely different world? Share your thoughts below. The hospital room felt smaller with the truth hanging between them. Minji saw past his designer clothes to the lonely boy inside. Alexander looked beyond her uniform to the warrior who'd crossed oceans for her family. Neither spoke of love, but it hummed in the air like electricity before a storm. When Minji returned to work a week later, things had shifted. Alexander's visits took on new meaning. He helped her study for business exams, genuinely interested in her dream of opening a Korean bakery. She taught him to fold paper cranes, laughing as his clumsy fingers struggled with the delicate folds. They were building something fragile and beautiful, one shared evening at a time. But fairy tales only exist in books, and New York society had other plans. It started with whispers at Blackwood Industries. The CEO was spending his evenings at a diner. Then photos appeared on gossip blogs. Alexander Blackwood emerging from Rosie's, his usual corporate armor replaced with genuine smiles. The headlines were cruel. Billionaire's midlife crisis? CEO slumming for kicks? Margaret Blackwood had built her son's empire alongside him, grooming him from birth to take his place among New York's elite. The news that he was consorted with a waitress, a foreign waitress, sent her into action. She hired the best private investigator money could buy. Within days, she knew everything. Minji's immigration status, legal but barely, her family's debts, her father's death at construction site, even her grades from Seoul University before poverty forced her dropout. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening. Margaret swept into Rosie's like a Category 5 hurricane in Chanel. The diner fell silent as she approached her son's booth, where he sat helping Minji conjugate business terms. Alexander. One word, but it carried the weight of 32 years of expectations. We need to talk. Privately. Mother. He didn't move. This is Minji. Minji, my mother. The two women assessed each other, one draped in diamonds, the other in polyester and pride. The air crackled with unspoken challenges. Mississippi Park. Margaret's smile could have frozen hell. I understand you've been entertaining my son. How much? Mother. Alexander's voice was sharp, but Minji placed a gentle hand on his arm. How much for what, Mrs. Blackwood? Minji asked, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. To leave. Disappear. I'm sure wherever you came from could use a generous donation. Shall we say $1 million? The diner's collective gasp could have been heard in New Jersey. Minji stood slowly, her 5'3" frame somehow filling the space. When she spoke, her voice carried the strength of every woman who'd ever been deemed not good enough. Mrs. Blackwood, I serve coffee. I don't sell my soul. And I definitely don't sell whatever feelings your son might have for me. Now, if you'd like to order something, I'd be happy to help. We have an excellent apple pie. Your son seemed to think it's worth more than money. She turned to Alexander, whose face showed a mixture of pride and pain. I'll give you both some privacy. As Minji walked away, back straight, dignity intact, Alexander felt something fundamental shift. He'd spent his life surrounded by people who could be bought. Here was someone who couldn't. His mother saw it too. The way his eyes followed the waitress, the way his entire body angled toward her like a plant-seeking sun. She's using you, Margaret hissed. They always do. These people see dollar signs, not you. These people. Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet. Mother. That woman worked 16-hour days to pay for her mother's cancer treatment. She's studying business at night to build something of her own. She makes me laugh. She makes me think. She makes me feel like more than a bank account with a pulse. What exactly have your society princesses ever offered besides pedigree and Botox? The slap came fast, sharp. The third time Margaret Blackwood had ever struck her son. The first was when he'd crashed his car at 16. The second when he'd almost married a fortune hunter at 25. This time, Alexander didn't flinch. Choose, Alexander. Her or your inheritance. Her or your position. Her or the family that built you. Margaret's ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine. You have 1 week to end this dalliance, or I'll end it for you. She swept out, leaving Alexander alone in the booth where his life had changed. Minji returned with coffee, her hands steady despite everything. She sat across from him, said nothing, just waited. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. She's right about one thing. You could do better than me. Better than a man who quotes philosophy over pie, who learns Korean to understand my dreams, who held my hand in an ambulance. Minji shook her head. Alexander, I've served coffee to thousands of people. Rich ones who don't see me, poor ones who can't afford to. You're the only one who ever asked my name and waited to hear the answer. He reached across the table, took her hand. For the first time since the hospital, they acknowledged what sparked between them. This is going to get ugly. My mother doesn't make idle threats. Then we'd better make it beautiful while we can, Minji replied. The next days tested them. Paparazzi appeared outside Rosie's. Minji's photo splashed across tabloids with headlines that made her sick. Gold digger or genuine? The waitress who caught a billionaire. Her apartment building's landlord received offers to evict. Her co-workers got calls asking for dirt. Even her brother in Seoul was approached by reporters. Through it all, Alexander stood firm. He hired security for Minji's apartment. He had his lawyers issue cease and desist orders to the worst offenders. But he couldn't protect her from the whispers, the stares, the cruel comments online, dissecting everything from her appearance to her accent. The breaking point came when someone spray-painted gold digger across Rosie's window. Minji arrived for her morning shift to find Rosie scrubbing at the red letters, tears in the older woman's eyes. 60 years I've run this place, Rosie said. Never had trouble till now. Maybe it's best if you take some time off. Honey, till this blows over. Minji understood. She was poisoned now, contaminating everything she touched. That night, she made her decision. When Alexander arrived for his usual visit, she met him at the door. We need to end this, she said, not trusting herself to let him inside. Your mother wins. I won't be the reason you lose your family, your company, everything you've built. Minji, I'm leaving for Korea. My mother needs me, and I need to remember who I was before I became tabloid fodder. She pressed something into his hand, a paper crane made from a coffee-stained napkin. Thank you for showing me I was worth more than tips and tired feet. Now let me show you the same thing. You're worth more than staying with someone who costs you everything. She closed the door before he could answer, sliding down the other side as sobs shook her small frame. Through the thin wood, she heard him whisper, "You're worth everything." Then footsteps fading away. That weekend, Alexander did something unprecedented. He disappeared. His mother, confident she'd won, prepared press releases about his upcoming engagement to Victoria Ashford. His board of directors, nervous about his absence, prepared contingencies. But Alexander was searching for something in his father's study, among papers that hadn't been touched since Richard Blackwood's death 5 years prior. He found it in a locked drawer, letters yellow with age, written in careful handwriting. Love letters from a woman named Sun Young, a Korean nurse who'd saved Richard's life after a car accident in 1968. The letters painted a picture of a love that transcended language barriers, class differences, and family disapproval. The last letter, dated a week before Richard's society wedding, contained a photo, a young Korean woman holding a baby, standing outside a hospital in Seoul. Alexander's hand shook as he read his father's response, unsent. My darling Sun Young, they say I must choose between love and family. I am a coward. I choose family. May you find a man braver than I. May our son grow up knowing love is worth more than gold. Forever yours in another life, Richard. The son, Alexander calculated dates, compared features. His father had had another child, a half-brother Alexander never knew existed. His father had chosen duty over love and spent 40 years regretting it. The realization hit like a physical blow. He was about to make the same mistake. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything you believed? Tell us your story. Alexander found his mother in her study, surrounded by wedding magazines and seating charts for a wedding he'd never agreed to. He placed the letters on her desk, watched her face cycle through shock, denial, and finally, a grief that aged her 10 years in 10 seconds. You knew, he said. It wasn't a question. Richard was weak, she whispered. I saved him from a life of struggle. I gave him purpose, position, power. You gave him a cage. A golden one, but still a cage. Alexander's voice held no anger, only sadness. He died saying another woman's name. Is that the life you want for me? To marry Victoria, have children who call me sir, and die wishing I'd been brave enough to choose love. Love fades, Margaret said, but her voice lacked conviction. Does it? Then why do you still keep Dad's letters? Why do you wear the watch he gave you on your first date? Why do you sleep on your side of the bed after 5 years? Alexander knelt beside his mother. Mom, you loved him. Despite everything, you loved him. Don't you want me to have what you had, but with someone who loves me back? Margaret Blackwood, Ice Queen of the Upper East Side, broke. 40 years of maintaining appearances crumbled as she sobbed for the man who'd given her everything except his heart. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. The nurse? Sun Young. Richard sent her money every month. For the child. I continued after he died. I need to find Min Ji, Alexander said urgently. She's leaving for Korea. LaGuardia. Terminal B. Her flight's at midnight. At her son's shocked look, Margaret managed a watery smile. You think I didn't research everything? Go. Be braver than your father. Braver than me. Alexander had never run so fast in his life. Marcus drove like a man possessed, while Alexander called the airline, called security, called anyone who might help. He burst into Terminal B at 11:47, searching frantically among the late-night travelers. There, a small figure in a worn coat, paper crane in her hand, walking toward the gate. Mjenjai. His voice echoed through the terminal. She turned, eyes wide, as he sprinted toward her, no longer the composo, but just a man terrified of losing everything that mattered. He skidded to a stop before her, chest heaving. My father loved a Korean nurse. Loved her his whole life. Died with her name on his lips. He was a coward. I'm not. He dropped to one knee, right there in Terminal B, pulling out his grandmother's ring. I don't want to be CEO of Blackwood Industries. I want to be CEO of that bakery you dream about. I want to fold 1,000 paper cranes with you. I want to burn my tongue on your grandmother's secret recipe. I want to wake up next to you in that tiny apartment and feel richer than I ever did in my penthouse. The terminal had gone silent. Phones recorded. Min Ji's tears fell freely. Alexander, get up. You're making a scene. Good. Let them see. Let everyone see that Alexander Blackwood chooses love over stock options, chooses happiness over hedge funds, chooses Minji Park over everything else. He stayed on his knee. Marry me. Not because I'm rich. I won't be after tonight. Not because of what I can give you, though I'll try to give you the world. Marry me because you make me want to be better than 3 generations of Blackwood men who chose wrong. You beautiful, impossible fool, Minji whispered. She pulled him to his feet, cupped his face in her small hands. Yes. Yes to the bakery. Yes to the paper cranes. Yes to burnt tongues in tiny apartments and a life that makes no sense to anyone but us. She kissed him as Terminal B erupted in applause, as phones flashed and strangers cheered and love won its sweetest victory. They were married 2 weeks later at City Hall, with Rosie as their witness and Marcus as best man. Alexander wore a suit from Target. Min Ji wore her grandmother's hanbok, shipped overnight from Seoul. Margaret attended, quiet and humbled, beginning the long journey toward redemption. The photos went viral. The billionaire who gave up billions for love, the waitress who couldn't be bought. If love knocked on your door tomorrow, would you be brave enough to let it change everything? The bakery opened 6 months later. Seoul meets York, a perfect blend of Korean tradition and New York innovation. Min Ji perfected her grandmother's recipes while Alexander handled the business side, his Ivy League education finally serving something meaningful. They lived in the apartment above the shop, falling asleep each night covered in flour and dreams. The first year was hard. They counted pennies, worked 18-hour days, faced skepticism from both communities. Korean elders whispered about Minji marrying above her station. Former business associates laughed at Alexander's fall from grace. But every morning, they woke up together. Every night, they shared their victories and defeats over tea and rice cakes. Love, they learned, was its own currency. Minji's mother arrived from Seoul on the bakery's first anniversary, finally healthy enough to travel. She wept when she saw her daughter's dream made real, wept harder when she met the man who'd made it possible. "He gave up everything for you," she said in Korean. Minji translated for Alexander, adding, "I gave up everything for him too. That's what makes us equal." Margaret's transformation took longer, but ran deeper. She started visiting the bakery weekly, learning to see past her prejudices one honey cake at a time. She discovered Minji's strength, intelligence, and fierce love for her son. Slowly, awkwardly, they built a relationship. The day Margaret brought her society friends to the bakery was the day Minji knew they truly won. 2 years after the airport proposal, Minji discovered she was pregnant. Alexander's joy could have powered Manhattan for a month. They decorated the nursery with paper cranes and business plans, with Korean lullabies and American dreams. When their daughter arrived, Helena Sunyoung Blackwood Park, 3 generations of love stories came full circle. Have you ever chosen love over logic? What happened next? The bakery grew. 3 locations, then 5. They hired immigrant women, single mothers, anyone who needed a second chance. Minji taught baking and business. Alexander mentored young entrepreneurs. Their story inspired others. The Korean-American girl who saw possibilities. The former CEO who found purpose. They were featured in magazines, not as scandal but as success. 5 years after spilled coffee changed everything, they renewed their vows in the bakery. Minji wore her flour-dusted apron over her grandmother's hanbok. Alexander's designer suits had given way to comfortable sweaters, his corporate severity to easy smiles. Helena toddled between them, carrying rings on a cushion shaped like a croissant. "You asked if I wanted cream with my coffee," Alexander said in his vows, his Korean now fluent. "You gave me sweetness I never knew I was missing. You gave me a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, a future worth believing in. Every day with you is better than every day without you could ever be." Minji responded through happy tears. "You showed me I was worth more than what others saw. You chose me when choosing me cost you everything. You learned my language, my dreams, my heart. We built this life from nothing but flour and faith, from coffee stains and courage. I would choose you again in every lifetime, in every universe, in every possible way." As their guests applauded, Rosie and Marcus, Margaret and Minji's mother, customers who become family, the truth of their journey settled over everyone like a blessing. Love hadn't made them rich in the way society measured. It had made them wealthy in ways that actually mattered. The newspaper that had once called Minji a gold digger ran a follow-up story, "The Waitress Who Gave a Billionaire Something Money Can't Buy." But Minji didn't read it. She was too busy living it, teaching Helena to fold paper cranes, planning the next bakery location, falling asleep each night next to the man who'd chosen her over an empire. Their love story became legend in both communities. Korean grandmothers brought their granddaughters to the bakery, whispering, "See? Love sees past everything." Former billionaires brought their sons, saying, "Success isn't about what you have, but who you have it with." The corner booth at Rosie's became a pilgrimage site for lovers who believed in impossible things. But for Alexander and Minji, it was simpler than legend. It was morning coffee shared in comfortable silence. It was flour in each other's hair after a long day. It was Helena's laughter filling their small apartment. It was choosing each other, again and again, in small ways and large, building a life that proved love was the only investment that always paid dividends. We all search for meaning in our lives. What if the meaning was never in what we achieve, but in who we choose to achieve it with? 10 years later, Seoul meets York had become a small empire of its own. 15 locations, a cookbook, a foundation for immigrant entrepreneurs. Alexander had found his way back to the business world, but on his terms, investing in dreams rather than derivatives. Minji had become a sought-after speaker, inspiring others with her journey from waitress to CEO. But their greatest success remained their first location, where it all began. They still lived in the apartment above that first bakery. They could afford mansions now, but why move? Every corner held a memory. Every creaky floorboard sang their song. Helena, now 7, did homework where her parents had done business plans. Her little brother, Richard Sunyoung, named for both grandfathers, took his first steps where his parents had danced on flour-dusted floors. Margaret, now a doting grandmother, visited weekly. She'd sold the Blackwood mansion, downsizing to a brownstone near the bakery. "I spent 40 years in that museum," she told Minji. "I want to spend whatever's left somewhere that feels like home." The Ice Queen had melted, replaced by a woman who taught Helena to make kimchi and helped at the bakery's community events. Minji's mother had moved to New York. Living in a comfortable apartment Alexander insisted on providing. She spent her days at the bakery, teaching traditional techniques to eager students, finally living the life her own mother had dreamed of. Watching her daughter succeed beyond all imagination was sweet, but watching her find true love was sweeter. The ultimate irony came when Blackwood Industries, struggling under new leadership, approached Alexander for consultation. He agreed, but only if they met at the bakery. Watching board members in $1,000 suits eating humble rice cakes, while Alexander explained market strategies in an apron, was a sight Minji treasured. He'd lost a fortune but gained something priceless, respect earned rather than inherited. Their story reached beyond New York. A film studio approached them about movie rights. They agreed, donating the proceeds to their foundation. At the premiere, walking the red carpet in clothes they'd bought off the rack, they laughed at the absurdity and beauty of it all. The girl who'd served coffee and the man who'd drunk it, now serving inspiration to millions. But fame didn't change their essence. Every Thursday, they returned to Rosie's Diner, sitting in that corner booth where lightning had struck. Rosie, now in her 80s, still insisted on serving them personally. "You two give me hope," she'd say. "In all my years, I've never seen love work so hard or shine so bright." One evening, as they sat in their booth, Helena coloring while baby Richard slept in Minji's arms, a young couple entered. The man wore an expensive suit, the woman a server's uniform from the restaurant down the street. They looked nervous, hopeful, impossible. Alexander and Minji exchanged glances, remembering. "Excuse me," the young woman approached shyly. Are you them?" The coffee couple. At their nods, her eyes filled with tears. "My boyfriend's family doesn't approve. They say I'm not good enough. They say love isn't enough. But you prove them wrong. You prove love is everything." Minji reached out, took the girl's hand. "Love isn't everything," she said gently, "but it's the only thing worth building everything else on. Be patient, be brave, be willing to lose what doesn't matter to gain what does." She looked at Alexander, still amazed after all these years. "And always remember, the best recipes come from the most unexpected ingredients." The couple left inspired. Alexander and Minji returned to their quiet meal, their simple life, their extraordinary love. Outside, New York rushed by in its eternal hurry. Inside Rosie's Diner, time moved differently, measured not in minutes but in moments of connection. As they prepared to leave, Alexander stood, stretched, then suddenly knelt beside the booth. Minji laughed. "What are you doing? You already proposed here." "I'm proposing again," he said, pulling out a simple gold band. "Minji Park, will you marry me? Today? Tomorrow? Every day for the rest of our lives? Will you keep choosing me even though I leave towels on the floor and burn every third batch of cookies?" "Alexander Blackwood," she replied, playing along. "I'll marry you again on one condition. You have to promise to love me even when I'm covered in flour, when I sing Korean songs off-key, when I cry at every movie where people find each other against the odds." "Deal," he said, sliding the ring on next to her original one. "Should we tell the kids their parents are crazy?" "They already know," Minji laughed, pull him up for a kiss that tasted like apple pie and forever. Walking home through streets they'd made their own, children in tow, dreams in hand, they passed the spot where they first collided. A small plaque had been installed by the city. Sometimes the best things in life begin with spilled coffee and end with overflowing hearts. "Mommy," Helena asked, Will I find someone who loves me like Daddy loves you? Minji knelt to her daughter's level. Baby, first you'll learn to love yourself like you deserve the moon. Then someone will come along who wants to help you reach it. But remember, they should love you for who you are, not what you have or where you come from. Like Daddy loved you even though you were just a waitress? I was never just a waitress, Minji corrected gently. I was a woman with dreams, working hard to make them real. Daddy saw that. He saw me. That's what real love does. It sees the truth of someone and says yes to all of it. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Alexander and Minji stood on their small balcony, looking out at the city lights. The same view cost millions from a penthouse. From their humble perch above the bakery, it was priceless. Do you ever regret it? Minji asked, though she knew the answer. The money, the power, the easy life. Every morning I wake up next to you instead of alone in silk sheets, Alexander said, pulling her close. Every day I build something real, instead of moving numbers on screens. Every night I fall asleep knowing I chose love over logic, heart over headquarters, you over everything. He kissed her forehead, tasting flower and dreams. My only regret is that I can't choose you all over again for the first time. Who says you can't? Minji smiled, turning in his arms. Every day we wake up, we choose each other again. That's what love is. Not a single grand gesture, but 1,000 small choices to keep building this life together. Coffee by coffee, cake by cake, kiss by kiss. As they held each other, the city hummed its lullaby around them. Somewhere, another unlikely couple was meeting. Somewhere, someone was choosing love over logic. Somewhere, a paper crane was carrying a wish toward heaven. And in a small apartment above a bakery that smelled like hope, two people who'd found everything by giving up everything held the whole world in their flour-dusted hands. The greatest love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two imperfect people refusing to give up on each other. They're about seeing someone's truth and choosing to dance with it. They're about building kingdoms from coffee grounds and courage, about finding home not in a place, but in a person. Alexander and Minji's story became a beacon, but the real magic happened in the quiet moments no one saw. Like the morning Minji found Alexander teaching himself to make her grandmother's secret honey rice cake at 4 a.m., determined to surprise her for their anniversary. His 17th attempt finally worked, and when she bit into it, tasting home and love in every grain, she cried for 20 minutes straight. Or the night Helena came home from school devastated because a classmate said her parents' love story was just a fairy tale that wouldn't last. Alexander and Minji didn't give speeches about love conquering all. Instead, they showed her their wedding album, not the professional photos, but the candids, pictures of them painting the bakery at 2 a.m., covered in more paint than the walls. Minji asleep on Alexander's shoulder after 18-hour days. Alexander learning to make kimchi, his eyes watering from a spice. Real love, they taught her, is a fairy tale. It's messier, harder, and infinitely more beautiful. The bakery became more than a business. It became a sanctuary. Every morning at 5 a.m., before the city woke, Alexander and Minji shared coffee in the kitchen, planning their day. It was their sacred time when CEO and waitress disappeared, leaving only two people who'd chosen each other over everything else. One morning, Minji found Alexander staring at a letter, his hands trembling. The return address was from Seoul, from the half-brother he discovered in his father's letters. After 3 years of searching, Alexander had found him, Dr. Richard Kim, a pediatric surgeon who looked remarkably like Alexander around the eyes. The letter was brief, cautious, but ended with an invitation to meet. "We should go," Minji said simply. "Helena and Richard should know their uncle. Your father's story doesn't have to end in regret. We can write a different ending. If you discovered you had family you never knew existed, would you reach out? What holds us back from connection?" The trip to Seoul was a journey through time and possibility. Helena practiced her Korean, excited to see where mommy came from. Baby Richard babbled in 2 languages. Alexander, nervous as he'd never been in any boardroom, held Minji's hand like a lifeline. The meeting was awkward at first. Dr. Kim, Richard, had built walls around his heart. growing up knowing his father chose another family. But walls crumble when faced with genuine warmth. Min-ji, fluent in the language of healing, slowly drew him out. Helena, with a child's directness, simply announced, "You're my uncle, and I love you already." By the end of the week, two broken halves of a family had begun to mend. They returned to New York with more than memories. Richard had agreed to visit, to let his own children know their American cousins. The sins of one generation didn't have to poison the next. Love, Alexander learned, wasn't just about choosing a partner. It was about choosing to heal wherever possible. Back at the bakery, life resumed its rhythm, but success brought new challenges. A major corporation offered to buy Seoul Meets York for $50 million. They promised to keep the recipes, the name, everything the same, just mass-produced, franchise, efficient. That night, Alexander and Min-ji sat in their kitchen, the offer letter between them like a test. $50 million would secure their children's futures, let them help more people, expand their foundation. It was more money than either had dreamed of when they'd mixed their first batch of dough with hope and stubbornness. "What do you think?" Alexander asked, though he already knew. "I think," Min-ji said slowly, "that we didn't give up your billions to gain different billions. We built this to show that some things can't be bought or sold. Every cake we make has our hands in it. Every employee is family. Every customer is part of our story. Can you mass produce that?" They declined the offer. The business news couldn't understand it. Couple rejects fortune for feelings the headlines mocked. But in the bakery the next morning, their employees, many of whom had been with them since the beginning, hugged them with tears in their eyes. They'd chosen family over fortune. Again, love isn't just about the big gestures. It's about choosing the same person and the same values, over and over, especially when easier options present themselves. The real test came when Min-ji's mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The strong woman who'd survived cancer, poverty, and immigration began to fade, forgetting names, faces, years. Some days she didn't recognize her daughter. Other days she thought Min-ji was still a child in Seoul, waiting for Papa to come home from the construction site. Alexander watched his wife's heartbreak daily. He rearranged the bakery schedule so Min-ji could spend mornings with her mother. He learned Korean songs from the 1960s to sing when his mother-in-law got agitated. He held Min-ji through nights when she sobbed, grieving someone who was still alive but slipping away. "I'm losing her," Min-ji whispered one night. "All those years of sacrifice, and now she can't even remember what we built." "She remembers what matters," Alexander said, holding her close. "Yesterday she called me, good son-in-law, and patted my cheek. She may not remember our bakery, but she remembers you're loved. That's everything she ever wanted for you." The bakery family rallied. Employees took turns visiting, bringing traditional Korean dishes that sometimes sparked recognition. Helena read to her grandmother in Korean, even when the words meant nothing. Baby Richard's laughter seemed to reach places words couldn't. Love became less about being remembered and more about simply being present. One lucid afternoon, Min-ji's mother grabbed her daughter's hand with surprising strength. "My little crane," she whispered in Korean, "you flew so far, built such beautiful nests. Mama is proud. Mama sees." It was the last fully coherent conversation they had, but it was enough. Love had been witnessed, acknowledged, blessed. Do we love expecting to be remembered? Or do we love because that's what hearts do? When she passed the following spring, the funeral filled with people whose lives she'd touched without knowing it. Customers who'd learned to make kimchi from her. Young Korean immigrants she'd mentored. Alexander's mother, who'd learned more about grace from this woman than from 40 years of finishing school. Min-ji grieved deeply but cleanly. At the bakery, she created a new pastry, Mama's Memory, a delicate combination of Korean rice cake and American coffee cake. The profits went to Alzheimer's research. Every bite carried the sweetness of remembrance, the bittersweetness of loss, the hope that love transcends memory. Life flowed on as life does. Helena grew into a thoughtful teenager who volunteered at homeless shelters and wrote poetry about identity. Richard Jr. showed a gift for mathematics and music, often found calculating recipe ratios while humming Korean folk songs. The bakery children, as customers called them, grew up understanding that wealth meant having enough to share. Alexander, now in his 40s, had developed a reputation as a reformed billionaire. Business schools invited him to speak about alternative success metrics. He always declined until Min-ji suggested they go together. Their joint lectures, Love as a Business Model, became standing-room-only events. They spoke not of romance, but of choosing values over valuations, of measuring success in community rather than currency. After one such lecture at Harvard, a young man approached. He wore an expensive suit, but carried himself with Alexander's old heaviness, the weight of inherited expectations. "My family owns half of Boston," he said quietly. "I'm supposed to marry the daughter of the family that owns the other half, but I love my parents' housekeeper's daughter. She's studying to be a doctor. My parents say I'm throwing away generations of work. Am I?" Alexander and Min-ji exchanged glances. How many times would their story need to be retold before the world understood? "You're not throwing away anything," Min-ji said gently. "You're building something new. But understand, love isn't just about defying your parents. It's about choosing to build a life with someone, brick by brick, day by day. It's unglamorous. It's hard. It's the best thing you'll ever do, if you do it for the right reasons. The question isn't whether she's worth your inheritance," Alexander added. "The question is whether you're brave enough to discover what you're worth without it. Love doesn't make life easier. It makes it meaningful. There's a difference." The young man left with more questions than answers, but that was the point. Love wasn't a solution. It was a choice that required daily renewal. When was the last time you chose love over logic? Not in grand gestures, but in small, daily decisions? The universe has a sense of humor. The same week Forbes featured Alexander in their richest to richest story about wealthy individuals who found different wealth. Victoria Ashford walked into the bakery. Alexander's almost fiancée from another lifetime stood in line like any customer, her designer heels clicking nervously on floors that had seen thousands of ordinary shoes. Min-ji, working the register that morning, recognized her immediately, the woman her mother-in-law had chosen, the road Alexander hadn't taken. Time had been kind to Victoria, but her eyes held an emptiness Min-ji recognized, the hollow echo of a life lived for others' expectations. "Table for one?" Min-ji asked kindly. "Actually," Victoria's voice was smaller than her reputation, "I came to see you, both of you, if you have time." They sat in the corner booth, that sacred space where it all began. Victoria's story spilled out between sips of coffee. The suitable marriage to a pharmaceutical heir. The perfect children sent to perfect schools. The charity galas and society pages. The prescription pills to numb the perfection. The divorce that made headlines. The realization at 45 that she'd never chosen anything for herself. "I hated you," she told Min-ji honestly. "You stole the life I was supposed to have. Then I realized you saved me from it. Alexander would have been miserable with me. I would have been miserable with him. We would have produced miserable children in a miserable mansion." She laughed, but was broken. "I'm 45 years old, and I don't know who I am. How pathetic is that?" "It's not pathetic." Min-ji reached across the table, taking the woman's manicured hand in her. Flour-dusted one. "It's human, and 45 isn't too late. It's never too late to choose yourself." Victoria stayed for 3 hours. Alexander joined them, and together they dismantled years of assumptions. By the time she left, she had a job offer, not charity, but genuine work. The bakery's new location needed someone with her connections and business acumen. More importantly, it needed someone hungry to discover who they were beneath the labels. 6 months later, Victoria Ashford, former pharmaceutical heiress, could be found most mornings teaching cake decorating to at-risk youth. Her designer clothes gave way to aprons. Her perfect smile became genuine. She was earning less in a year than she used to spend on handbags, and she'd never been happier. "You gave me my life," she told Alexander and Min-ji at the bakery's 10th anniversary celebration. "By not marrying me, by choosing her, you showed me choice was possible. Thank you for the life I didn't know I wanted." The anniversary party was a testament to how far they'd come. The mayor attended, not for politics, but because his daughter had found her calling in the bakery's youth program. Margaret Blackwood, now a silver-haired grandmother who wore her wrinkles with pride, gave a toast that brought tears. 10 years ago, I thought I was losing my son. I was right. I lost the son I tried to create. I gained the son he was meant to be. And I gained a daughter who taught me that strength comes in all languages, all backgrounds, all heart sizes. To Alexander and Minji, proof that love isn't blind. Love sees everything and chooses anyway. As the evening wound down, Alexander and Minji found themselves back in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side like they had in the early days. No staff tonight, just them, the suds, and the comfortable silence of a decade's partnership. Do you ever wonder about the road not taken? Minji asked, scrubbing a particularly stubborn pan. The penthouse life? The easy path. Alexander dried the pan she handed him, considering. Sometimes I dream about it. The penthouse. The portfolio. The emptiness. He hung the pan on its hook, turned to face her. Then I wake up next to you and realize I'm not dreaming anymore. I'm living. They finished the dishes, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs to their apartment. The same stairs they climbed 1,000 times. The same door they'd opened to every possibility. Inside, their children slept. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new chances to choose each other. But tonight, they stood on their small balcony, looking out at their kingdom. Not of glass and steel, but flower and hope, struggle and joy, choices and consequences. The city sparkled around them, full of other stories beginning, ending, transforming. I love you, Minji said, words worn smooth by daily use but no less meaningful. I love you more, Alexander replied, their old game. Impossible, she countered. I love you most. Prove it, he challenged, pulling her close. Every day, she promised, every single day. And she did. They both did. In small ways and large, in difficult times and easy ones, they proved that love wasn't a feeling, but a choice. Not a destination, but a journey. Not a fairy tale, but a real story written in coffee stains and cake batter, in tears and laughter, in the decision to keep choosing each other when the world offered easier options. Somewhere in the city, someone was falling in love against all odds. Somewhere, someone was choosing heart over headquarters. Somewhere, someone was learning that the best recipes, for bakeries, for families, for lives worth living, always start with the most unexpected ingredients. The Blackwood Park family slept, dreams full of tomorrow's possibilities. And in a diner on 42nd Street, Rosie wiped down tables and smiled, remembering the night when a billionaire met a waitress and proved that sometimes, just sometimes, spilled coffee can change the world. After all, the greatest love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two imperfect people refusing to give up on each other, building kingdoms from kindness, and discovering that the only wealth worth having is the kind you can't count but can't live without. What unexpected ingredient will transform your life? When will you be brave enough to add it to your recipe? The end was really just another beginning. Because true love stories never really end. They just keep getting better, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one lifetime at a time. And in a small apartment above a bakery that smelled like dreams come true, two people who'd given up everything to gain each other held the whole world in their flour-dusted hands, proving forever that sometimes the best things in life really do begin with spilled coffee and end with overflowing hearts.